Well, welcome to today's podcast episode. And while I have your attention, I would like to talk about there's a couple, 2 or 3 different points that I would like to discuss. And they are all labor force participation problems. This doesn't just extend into the construction industry. It actually extends to just about all of the workforce across the country, but I find their positions anyway, they're very interesting. And so here we go, and let's dive into it. We're just going to go straight into it, okay? We have some serious problems when it comes to our labor force. I could talk about it all day long. The National Labor Relations Board, to be blunt, has been watered down significantly. It needs to be basically reimagined in a more pro-worker tone and force, and not the other way around. Management has continually watered it down. And you think, well, that's what I'm going to talk about. Nope, not even that. That has a significant amount of problems that we definitely need to address. But today, what we're going to actually be talking about is more cultural, right? And it's quite simply this. I've seen this on Reddit. I've seen this on LinkedIn, and I find it fascinating. Number one, this idea that, first off, let me lay a little bit of groundwork for this one, right? The baby boomer generation is retiring. Now, the baby boomer generation, interestingly enough, so we got probably maybe 10 more years of the baby boomers significantly are retiring before the overwhelming majority of them are out of the workforce. I'd say about 10 years, give or take. You'll still have some that'll hang on, maybe way too long, depending on how you look at it, but it doesn't really matter at this point. About 10 years and we're taking them out. The thing that's interesting about the baby boomer generation when they're, let's say retiring, is that many of the baby boomers themselves are the ones who got jobs when they did not have, let's say, educational barriers, and then turned right around and put educational barriers on future individuals that are going to take those roles. Or to say it another way, they get a job, they build up, or are blessed, if you want to look at it that way, to go into a company, and next thing you know, they write a job description and everything that they themselves could not get. And this experiment, right, this playing with job requirements, et cetera, it extends down into a problematic issue where, oh, well, look at this. I'm doing a job that I should be able to do. I should be able to learn on a job. I should be able to figure this out with, enough of my intellect. I should be able to figure all these things out. And yet, what they have done is they have written into a job description educational requirements that largely have absolutely nothing to do with the task at hand. Absolutely nothing. This is a cultural phenomenon that has been taking place for decades now. Decades. We have put educational hurdles in front of people to try and get jobs, and it makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. I remember reading in The Math Myth and Other STEM Delusions by Andrew Hacker. If you have not read that book, it's a fascinating book. I read the whole thing cover to cover and then automatically reread it again. It was that good. Andrew Hacker talked about a group of guys that were looking to hire, and they had put a requirement for math degrees on whatever job they were looking to hire. And he asked them, what is it about the math degree? What is it about the job description, if you will, that they need math? And he said they sheepishly was the word he used. Sheepishly is the word that he used when they replied, nothing. There was no requirement for math at all to be used on the job, in the job description. And they admitted to him that they were using it as if you got a math degree, that you are going to be, let's say, an ideal candidate, or at least you are going to bring a little bit more to the table. Never mind the fact that you're not taking this math degree and actually using it. So it's a form of gatekeeping, really. But at the end of it all, was like, why are we putting this burden up here? What are we doing? We're doing nothing. And this has been ramped up over and over and over and over again until it seems to be the norm from a cultural perspective. You don't have a bachelor's? What do you mean? And it's really only been, I would say, about the past 5 years. I'll be generous. But it's really only been about the past 5 years that you are seeing culture kind of push back a little bit on this and say, wait a minute now. Why are we doing this? And really the only significant reason that there's been any kind of pushback at all is in large part because what you are seeing is enormous amounts of college tuition debt, like 1.7 trillion. And social media is being used by a lot of those individuals to come out and say, hey, don't fall for this trap. I fell for it, and I have made X amount of dollars, and I've spent all this money, and I am still paying on these loans. Predatory, by the way. I've got a podcast episode that I hope to record with somebody who was a part of that specific tenant, that specific, job, and has, some experience that can speak to it. And all of these cultural things are kind of taking place where people are going, no, I'm going to pump the brakes on this. And what are you seeing then? From a college perspective, you're seeing a lot of them talk about the trades. You're seeing a lot of them, they got their skilled trades, workforce, apparatuses, programs, whatever. Because what they are seeing, they're reading the tea leaves, if you will. And what they're seeing then is a cultural cooling of the acceptance, just the acceptance that I'm going to stick you on the conveyor belt and send you on down into the college experience, whatever the hell that means. Anyway, it's not a thing. And that they're reading the tea leaves, if you will. And so why is this important? It's important because what we are doing is we are saying to people, we value education. We have wanted to value education, and we have said it for decades now at this point. You need a college degree. You need a college degree. They're good jobs. You need a college degree. Meanwhile, I know people who are in the trades who are making way, way more than what is reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And guess what? They don't have the college tuition debt that others have. But here's the rub, and this is the most, what I'll say, nefarious thing about this whole, this whole argument, is that companies are really, really good at double talk. Because on one hand, they will tell you that that they value education. They put this educational hurdle. And I've seen this over and over and over again. Here's an educational hurdle. I don't care what your degree is in. Doesn't matter. But you got to have one. I knew a construction manager who was a good construction manager. He knew what he was doing. He was in the industrial setting. But to get him to get the job that they were eyeing for him, because he obviously had the experience, they said, you've got to have some kind of degree. We got to have you. We have artificially created this perspective, right? So you have to have this degree before I can, you got to be working on it, kind of thing. So companies will say, we want you to have this. We have this educational hurdle, this check in the box. We value this. We value this. We value this. But on the other hand, watch who gets paid the most. It is not the person that goes and gets a college degree that comes to work. Because all you have demonstrated at this point, and I'm not trying to diminish anybody. I've got a bachelor's degree myself. I'm not trying to diminish that. What I am saying is that you don't even have a foundation to build on at that point. And you were lied to, a lot of us. A lot of you were lied to. It's the experienced people they pay. It's in the construction industry, it's the superintendents. It's many of the project managers that come out of the field. It's the experience that gets paid the money. It's not the new person that comes in with an educational degree. It doesn't matter. It's not as valuable because education is pitted against experience and the cultural norm, and the cultural norm says we're valuing the education, but on the other hand, we're saying this, but we're paying these guys all this money because we value the experience. That's what you've got. And so what do you do then? You're creating this cultural brouhaha, if you will, that's bound to give at some point. Nothing wrong with pursuing higher educational endeavors. I am currently in the middle of getting some credentials, and I'll deal with the credentials section in a second. I'm in the middle of doing a few things, getting licenses and all that kind of stuff. But at the end, it has not helped me one bit, and it's likely not to help you. It's the experience in the end. And it's bananas, all right? So that's the first of the things, is that just recognize that we talk about culturally that we value education, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, what we do is we value experience. And we place these artificial, arbitrary educational stumbling blocks in front of people. And what we are doing is we are boxing out a whole lot of other people who have a lot to contribute because we put this artificial hurdle in front of you that we don't even really value in the first place. So you scratch your head and you go, why is this here? Good question. I don't know. But in so many instances, it needs to go away. It needs to go away. So that's the first one, all right? The second one is, you can kind of piggyback off of it, but the second one is, well, we talk about from a labor perspective that we're having a difficult time finding individuals to take jobs. The construction industry is like, it is, as the baby boomers retire, the construction industry is facing a significant shortage. You hear this all the time. We need people, we need people, we need people. All right, again, going back to Andrew Hacker of the math myth and other STEM delusions, he talked about this, and I don't remember where it was at. It was a shop or somewhere like this. And the guy was fussing that he could not find good employees. He couldn't find anybody to take his job. And so he was like, well, how, like looking at what was requested of an employee or a prospective employee. And then he looked at how much money he was offering. I think $12 an hour or something like that. $12 an hour. No wonder you're not finding anybody, because you're not paying good. Inflation aside, you're not paying somebody. They're not going to come work for you. The wages haven't kept up. And it's only really now that we're beginning to see the wages kind of go up, if you will, from what I'll say has been a suppression of, in the construction industry anyway, the wages. The wages haven't been kept up for a long time, and we're only just now starting to see what I'll say is significant interest in bringing that up, because as people go and as people are retiring, the industry is talking about how we can't find people. And yet, again, the industry they're just as good as business when it comes to double talk, because you have what I'll call the disappearing or disappeared rungs on the bottom of the ladder, i.e., the entry-level jobs that are gone or we're not even considering. Meaning, we talk about we need people. We sit here and talk about how construction firms want people, et cetera, et cetera. We got all this work and everything else, and this doesn't just apply to construction. I just happen to be talking about it because that's the industry that I'm currently in. But it applies to a bunch of other people. We talk about how we need people, but we don't want to take the time to develop them. We don't want to take the time to train them. Why? Because we bit down the narrative, which was the first one, which is you should be able to come to my place of employment having learned everything you need to from a higher educational institution. Wrong on so many levels. But because you have bitten down on this narrative and you hook, line, and sinker, now what's taking place is, what do you mean I actually have to train people? What do you mean I actually have to have entry-level jobs? Somebody's got to start somewhere. If you're even able to get somebody interested in the entry-level game in the construction industry as an apprentice, but it could, whatever your job title happens to be for somebody entry level, to develop them, to train them up, then you should be capitalizing on that. Not complaining that I don't have time. I got all this work and I need guys who are 20 years in the game. What do you think it's going to look like 20 years down the line? You're going to be in serious trouble. We're already in trouble for a lot of businesses anyway, because we haven't been doing what we should be doing, which is developing, mentoring, etc., and focusing on those various things. 20 years down the road, it's going to be way more difficult than it even is right now. And so what my advice to anybody who happens to be listening, and hopefully it's a bunch of business owners who are genuinely curious, however you stumbled upon this content, is to focus. Your issue, the success for you is not going to be paying headhunters for every single position that you've got available. You are wasting your time and money, I might add. There is a place for headhunting, for recruitment firms, but it's way less, it has way less importance than what people are putting on it. The real thing that you should be doing is focusing on recruitment, retention, then growth. I need to look at the people I've got working for me. How do I develop them if they want to go up into a different position or whatever that, those are I need to promote from within. And then I need to recruit newer people in our industry, in the construction industry. It's getting involved in apprenticeships. I highly recommend anybody that is listening that is actively looking for a source problem with their labor issues, and you can't find anybody, to get plugged into a local union somewhere so that you can get apprentices and begin to train up the next generation. This is exactly what you're going to want to do for long-term success, and to get it out of your head that the entry-level jobs are not where it's at. No, this is exactly where you need to be focusing on. You need to be focusing on the apprentices, the future of your company, so that in the end of it all, you are going to solve problems. And you can't sit here and go, well, I fell for the rhetoric that was culturally expounded, which is, that you got to go to college to get a good job. And I'm not going to find somebody that comes along as an apprentice or somebody in the entry-level jobs. You can't sit here and be genuine and say, with a straight face, I might add, that I'm having a hard time finding people to fill my jobs, and I'm not interested in or willing to, number one, pay them good wages, and number two, mentor/develop them. You can say these things and be genuine if you're doing them, but a lot of people aren't. And that's where the rubber meets the road when we talk these cultural inflections, these issues that are coming to a head. Some of these people have been saying this for a long time, and it is just now really biting them. When I try to say, listen, and I've said this for every employer that I've talked to, every apprentice that I talk to. This is applicable in the blue collar world, the white collar world. Like, entry-level jobs matter. Entry-level jobs matter. We can't sit here and say that there's a labor shortage and at the same time not bring in people at the entry level and develop them. We can't do that. It doesn't work. It's clearly not working. You sit here on, in the same, it's clearly not working. And so we have to do something different. And so we have to acknowledge, first off, if you ask me, we have to acknowledge the cultural problems that we just kind of perpetuate, the narratives, the one-liners, the empty rhetoric, the things that we just kind of spout off at the mouth with verbal diarrhea, that we can sit here, there's labor shortage. What are we talking about here? If we're not willing to actively do all that we can in the attempt to employ people, which is the recruitment and recruitment part, there you go, bringing them in at the entry level, and then also not having these artificial, unnecessary barriers in front of them, then we can really begin to try and solve our labor issue problems. But until then, what we are doing is stumbling around and bumbling around in the dark. And that's where a lot of companies happen to be. Quite frankly, they are stumbling around. They come up with, they got empty rhetoric and polemic, and they don't have entry-level jobs because they think that they don't want to take they believe that they don't have the time to do it. They believe that it's not worth it. They believe it's someone else's job. Nope, it is yours. It's your job. Now, if you partner up, if you're in the construction industry and you partner up with a registered apprenticeship program, I would highly advise you to go with union. There's so much that you really don't understand about how many benefits you get and how advantageous it is for you. When you partner up with a union registered apprenticeship program, you get significant value out of that. That will help you for sure find and train the next generation, your next workforce that are going to be with you. It's a win-win. It's a win-win. These are the issues, by the way. I'll just go ahead and say this outright before we end this podcast episode. But these are the issues that most people are not actively talking about. We say dumb stuff like, we got a labor shortage. Okay, well, what are we actively doing to contribute to our problems? Well, one of them is we're putting these artificial barriers in front of us. Education, when we really value experience. And how do you get experience? You have to hire and develop and mentor the next generation. If you don't, we're not going to go anywhere. We're spinning our wheels. You get the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Albert Einstein said, that's insanity. Let's look at doing something different. And this is not just for those of us in the construction industry. This is also for those of you in the white collar world. You guys like your entry level positions as well. But you know what you often do? You often try to offer them as internships. Internships should, if you ask me, internships ought to solely be offered just to see if this is a job or a career field that you may be particularly interested in doing. And that's it. And ideally, it is offered to individuals who are far, far younger. Maybe they're still in high school, could be in college, but maybe they're in high school. So I don't waste your time when it comes to, well, don't spend a significant amount of your energy and whatnot thinking about this particular job. Here, we'll give you an internship. Come and see what it's actually like. But companies are so accustomed to getting something for nothing, or they actively try to get something for nothing, that this is what they do. For those of you in the white collar world with your internships or whatever, look, stop putting educational barriers that they're arbitrary, they don't matter, and they don't really tell me anything of value. Actually, they can hurt people in so many ways. Because, and this is a different podcast episode, but what is really possible with your double talk about how people they need this educational accolade, this tool in their back pocket. You enable, what you really do is you enable the very real possibility that somebody becomes overqualified for an entry-level position. When you don't have the entry-level positions and you are the one who has burdened them with this educational endeavors. It's like working in a circle, making it next to impossible. As I said at the outset of this, we have some very significant issues that we have to wrestle with culturally. But we cannot begin to solve a problem if we're not willing to admit that it actually exists. And that's where we happen to be currently. It's one of the reasons why I actively like to talk in a podcast format, because I get to explain, I get to explore, I get to have these conversations. So I want to, and so while I'm getting ready to end this podcast episode, if you are a listener and you are interested in being a guest on this podcast, because a lot of the content certainly seems to be solo driven, monologues and the like, I do have podcast guests on from time to time, and as interest grows, so too does the guest list. So if there's anybody out here that is listening that would like to be a guest on this podcast, I will leave a link in the description. It'll take you directly over to the contact page. You can fill a form out, sends me an email, and lets us begin the connection process to have you on here. It really doesn't matter to me what your occupation is. So long as I can find value and I believe that it's going to create value for the people who consume this podcast, we can have a conversation. Now, having said all of that, I really appreciate your time and the attention that you guys give me as an audience. It does not go unnoticed. I assure you of that. So, thanks for listening to the podcast episode. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you on the next one.